Good morning and welcome to today's webinar, where attendees will learn about Alithya's capital portfolio planning process built upon real-world implementations in healthcare, higher ed, and transportation. Today's webinar is hosted by David Pabst, Practice Manager, and Misha Deering, Principal Solutions Director, both at Alithya. During the webinar, you may submit questions through the chat module, and time will be made at the end of the webinar to address them. Alithya offers value-added services including enterprise resource planning, enterprise performance management, an e-business suite, and business analytics. Stay connected with us for answers to your business analytics solutions needs. Dave?
Thank you, Joey. Welcome, everyone, to our session today. Again, my name is David Pabst. I'm Alithya's Capital Portfolio Planning Product Manager, which means I focus on helping organizations that are looking to improve their capital planning, requisition, and projects process. I've lived it. I've been a former financial systems manager for two public multi-billion-dollar organizations. I'm a certified public accountant, a PMP, and have found my niche in life implementing financial systems, specifically Oracle EPM planning, various analytics and data warehousing solutions, as well as ERPs. Feel free to follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn. I'm part of an organization, Alithya. Alithya is one of the leaders in business analytics. We implement enterprise performance management, enterprise resource planning, and analytics solutions. We've done over 2,000 projects over the past 20 years in a variety of domains. We have 5 Oracle ACEs on our staff. We have 5 Oracle ACEs on our staff that are experts in the field, and our management team has between 8 and 15 years of experience. Alithya joined forces with Ranzel in 2018. We have over 2,000 people as part of our broader organization and can help institutions across a variety of technologies and different kinds of projects. So our talk today is specifically going to cover 3 different areas. It is, what is capital portfolio planning? What are the 7 challenges of capital portfolio planning and how can we improve? And Misha Deering is going to help us with a demonstration of our capital portfolio planning application. So what is capital portfolio planning? Capital portfolio planning is a continuous integrated process to obtain, prioritize, and disperse funds in pursuit of investing in the organization's future. It's an integrated process that crosses all the different parts of your organization, the financial planning process, so how you're spending capital and how that impacts your balance sheet and cash flow statements. It affects your fundraising and treasury function around what level of fundraising you need to do, whether you need to issue debt, issue stock, raise capital through various means, as well as your strategic planning process. So you're investing in the right kinds of initiatives, or your initiatives aligned with your strategic goals as an organization, as well as your purchasing processes, your fixed assets management processes as your capital projects come to completion. Do you have an integrated connection to close out your capital projects and put assets into service, as well as your IT, facilities, and project management functions. There's an objective. Why do we do capital portfolio planning? It's really to invest in your organization's future. I think that's what makes it so exciting and why I like doing these projects. You got to ask yourself, are you investing in the right initiatives? You want to make sure you're a good steward of the organization's funds. Are we spending it on things that really are going to improve the organization's future? As well as finance needs to drive efficiencies and economies of scales, while also ensuring that the right control environment is in place. Are there controls in place to make sure that capital projects aren't overspending their budget? Are we making sure that people aren't just going and starting a capital project without the right approvals, as well as making sure that your standard purchasing and fraud prevention controls are in place? So Alithya helps our capital-intensive clients simplify and standardize capital portfolio planning. Through these projects, we often encounter what we like to call the 7 challenges of capital portfolio planning. I wrote a recent blog with my colleague Andy Starks, which is a more detailed cut of these 7 challenges and how we like to address them. So I encourage you to read our blog. And getting into them, the 7 challenges are the first one that we often see as we help organizations with capital portfolio planning is an opaque capital investment pipeline. What this basically is business units and departments typically focus on just in the moment during their capital request process and really don't have a lot of time to think strategically about what investments they'd like to make. Finance only gets a glimpse of what the organization needs during that once-a-year annual capital requisition process. And it's hard for the organization to think strategically across groups, especially when you're in a time crunch and people are trying to get requests submitted. And so what we encourage organizations to do is to foster a process for departments and managers to think strategically and manage a mini investment roadmap for the different functional areas. And if you implement a system that can help with your capital process, it can facilitate allowing departments to enter requests throughout the year, start to prioritize them, and start to think about requests that they might want to invest in, next year or 2 years out, and really get people thinking a little more strategically than just during the capital requisition process. And a centralized system provides a multi-year view of what's needed for stakeholders like finance, treasury, facilities, and purchasing that they can analyze and study what kind of needs are coming out in the future. The second challenge we often see at organizations that we help with capital portfolio planning are many cross-functional teams are not involved early during the planning process. So teams like IT, facilities, supply chain, and purchasing not involved consistently during the capital request and budget process. Often stakeholders get missed and find out the hard way when a piece of equipment shows up at a loading dock and someone says, hey, now we need to get this copier or MRI machine or server in a rack and mounted, especially with everything being internet connected and IoT based these days. Pretty much every capital purchase an organization makes is either going to require IT support or facility support. So making sure key stakeholders get involved while people are thinking about investing in something versus on the back end after it's been purchased and delivered. And then also, if cross-functional teams are not involved early, you miss out on opportunities if 2 different parts of an organization are thinking about investing in the same thing or buying the same product from 2 different vendors. You miss out on bulk purchases and economies of scale in that sense. How we solve it, a standardized request form and a workflow process will help ensure requesters think about holistic investments. And then, if you have a system to drive your capital request process, we can use certain fields or dollar amounts to trigger requests to make sure that IT, facilities, or supply chain get notified either via email or via a dashboard that there might be something out there that they should weigh in on. The third challenge we often see at organizations that we help with capital portfolio planning is that the capital requisition process is not real time. The budget process, so there's often a mentality of spend it or lose it. VP and functions get that capital budget. It might be assigned 9 months ahead of time, and late during the fiscal year, they want to spend it. Some organizations don't have a formal process to make sure that VPs or functional areas can need to go back and ask for approval for capital requests when they're ready to spend. And without a formal request process, often you'll get your stakeholders missed, like we just spoke about. And then if people are drawing down budgets just because they have them, months could have passed since budgets were finalized. Is it still the right use of funds? Priorities change, et cetera. Do you want people authorizing the spend of a budget just because they have it? So what we recommend is across all capital spending. This is not capital budgeting, but when you get ready to spend and draw down a capital budget, that you make sure that all areas submit a capital request to spend for all capital spending. Even routine spending against pre-approved capital budget, like a VP or functional area, requires a request when ready to spend. And if you have a system managing where everything is, it's easy for everyone to have cross-functional visibility of what budgets are left, and helps avoid people gaming the system to just try to spend down their capital budgets at the end of the year. The fourth challenge we see is no link from a capital request to a capital budget. Always there's going to be more asked for capital in an organization than there is money to go around. And we see often that the left hand and the right hand have a tough time coming into balance. So the treasury function is trying to make sure that there's enough funds in the various checking accounts to pay all the invoices for capital projects in the short run. But they're also trying to balance the long-term capital funding needs of the organization to try to understand, how much, what is the right amount that the organization can be funding, on a 2, 3, or 5 year basis. And often we'll see the capital request process is so narrow, just focusing in the current year, that a lot of organizations don't think about, where's the money coming from to fund these requests. And if you start to have your departments thinking a little more strategically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years out with their departmental sandbox and their mini roadmaps, you start to think about asking requesters to think about how are we going to pay for these different investments? Is it going to come from fees? Is it going to come from debt? Is it going to come from an endowment, fundraising, grants, etc.? And start to understand that both the funding need of the organization as well as the source of funds for the organization. So some of the things to help address the lack of linkage between a capital request and the capital budget is during the annual capital budgeting season, to most organizations we recommend to set a capital budget by portfolio. What is the routine spending for an area? What is the strategic funding level for the organization? What might be the master facilities investment for the organization, as well as setting an overall capital budget by the source of funds. So, how much can the organization issue debt? How much are we expecting for capital projects to be paid for from operations, and so on? And then clearly, if you have a system and to help drive this, you can start to balance the available funding against requests as they get approved through the organization. The fifth challenge we see with capital portfolio planning is often what people are investing in aren't linked to the strategic goals of the organization. Without centralizing all the needs of the organization, it's hard to know if people are spending on the right goals of the organization. What we like to see is ensuring that when capital requests are submitted, to make sure that people outline which goals does the capital request fulfill, and by tagging the source of funds for a request, as well as what organization goals are for the proposed investment, we can start to perform sensitivity analysis about, should we do more big projects, more small projects? Should we delay projects? Should we accelerate projects as we have more funding than we thought? Or should we change, any different permutations? So a system can help you take different pools of requests and start to perform different sensitivity analysis to see how it'll impact your long-range plan as well as your financial statements, through an integrated tool. The sixth challenge we often see with capital portfolio planning projects are surprise project overruns, and it's really a symptom of not having all stakeholders involved during the request process. Often projects get going and ask for more funding. The original request clearly did not include all costs, and typically it's probably because your cross-functional groups got left out during the request and approval process. And this is especially acute on smaller capital investments that might not require all of the different approval limits within your organization. You might see, someone spending down the budget that they have in their area, and they purchase a piece of equipment, a small piece of equipment like a copier, as an example. And because it's a connected device, it needs IT support to get it connected, and that causes the project to go instantly over budget, because once the thing lands in the loading dock, the people that receive it say, what are we supposed to do with this? And then they have to go back to the well and ask for more funding. And part of this is also because there's a long lead time between when someone proposes a project and gets their budget assigned and when they actually go and spend it. And as we said before, it's really important to separate the capital budgeting process from the point in time when people want to go and start the requisitioning process for a capital project. And it is important to ask people to re-request during the year when they're ready to go spend on capital, the spend capital that they have budgeted, to make sure that they go and ask approval to spend on that capital and re-estimate, get updated quotes and all of that before they start requisitioning for it. So some of the things that we can do to help is, if you implement the system, standard request forms that include toggles for different kinds of requests, and that we ensure that all the different financial aspects of a given request are captured. So having different financial line item detail on the request to force requesters to think about the total cost. So have a line for IT, have a line for outside services, have a line for equipment, and then provide visibility to your cross-functional teams via dashboards, alerts, and emails that say, hey, someone in an area just entered a request for $5,000 to go buy a copier. It's listed as IT equipment, and then they'll show up on an IT dashboard. So the IT people not necessarily approve or deny it, but that they have visibility to it. And if there are questions about it, they can reach out and provide input. Then the final challenge of capital portfolio planning that's probably near and dear to many people's hearts is it's often the red-headed stepchild in many organizations where it has not been automated and had a system brought to bear. It's too manual, it's all in Excel, it's all in Word, it's all in email. It's hard on internal customers, people submitting requests. Requests get lost via email, requesters don't know where they stand if more information is needed. And it's hard on the poor person in finance that has to consolidate. If you have 100 requests coming in during capital budget season, it ends up being email, Excel version hell. Someone needs to consolidate all those requests into a spreadsheet. They need to take them up through the various levels of approval, up to the capital committee, up to the board of directors, and constantly trying to triangulate the requesters, the approvers, and finances needs all in Excel. And then once projects get going, it's hard to monitor the health of capital projects once they get going. You typically, if it's not automated, a person in finance needs to download procure to pay report to see what is the current commitments and spend against different capital projects, get it bounce it up against the capital budgets in Excel, and then publish reporting out to the different areas. And because it's all manual, it lags. It's prone to error. People can make bad decisions with it. And then as projects start to wrap up, it can become difficult to identify projects that are completing and going into service. So, again, if you're only doing this on a monthly or quarterly basis to pull your data from your ERP system, you might not have a clean turnover process to your accounting department, place assets into service, and then depreciate them with the system. It can let you know, as you're approaching the budgetary maximum as well as nearing the in-service date, it can flag on a dashboard to let you know, hey, these projects are getting near the end, and to take action. So those are the 7 challenges we often see with capital portfolio planning at our client organizations. And so how do we pivot from these common challenges? What we've done at Alithya is we've leveraged learning from multiple capital portfolio planning projects, and we've standardized how we've attacked these projects into a prescriptive business process, and then we implement the leading cloud planning platform, Oracle's EPM planning, to give our clients the benefit of faster and lower projects, or lower risk projects, that are basically, we come in and we have a prescriptive business process that we built up over many of these implementations on how we would recommend you do your capital request prioritization and approval process, while still giving you the ability to tailor to your organization with your specific workflows, your specific chart of accounts, but also allowing us to integrate with any other Oracle EPM investments for your financial headcount or CapEx planning, as well as with your ERP systems, so that we can send your approved capital project budgets to your ERP system to limit spending on the procure to pay process, as well as pulling in spending and commitments again for capital projects into the planning tool so you can monitor the health of your capital project portfolio. And so Alithya's capital portfolio planning process eliminates the time-consuming paper-based Word, Excel, and email requests. It streamlines the management of high-dollar multi-year capital portfolios. It leverages a full lifecycle process to take you from a capital request in a user's departmental sandbox all the way to an in-service asset. And it provides purchasing, IT, and facilities the opportunity to provide input during the request and prioritization cycle, while reducing operational risk by informing your P2P process, like I said, of approved budgets, and vice versa, to prevent overspending on in-flight projects. And our process is request, so allowing departmental areas to build up their mini investment roadmaps, taking requests from your sandbox during the capital budget season, and allowing the organization to prioritize them at different levels, understanding the funding around different requests. So how are we going to fund requests? Are they coming from operations? Are we going to fund from debt or endowment, grants, or other ways, so you can understand, how are we paying for all the different capital investments? Ultimately, taking requests up to your capital committee and your board of directors to approve them, creating capital projects where we execute and monitor those capital projects, and people can procure against those capital projects in your ERP system, ultimately creating an asset that's placed in service, a project gets closed, and the cycle continues. So our 7 challenges, we help organizations evolve to our recommended view of how organizations should handle capital portfolio planning. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Misha Deering, the Director of Solution Engineering at Alithya, who is going to give us a short demo of Alithya's capital portfolio planning demo environment. Misha?
Good morning. Thank you, David. So hopefully everyone can see my screen, but this is basically the landing page or home page of our capital portfolio planning solution. This is a configurable view that we're seeing here that can be adapted to each client's needs. And for those of you who are already familiar with the Oracle EPM Cloud platform, you'll notice that it looks very similar. So it has a lot of the same capabilities, as well as the ability to produce formatted reports and dashboards. With our CPP solution, we do have a centralized and actionable platform that addresses a lot of the challenges that David just spoke about. The ability to manage and request, to view and promote those requests in here, the ability to go and review requests and approve them, at either a department level or a VP level or whatever the level of authorization that's required. He had mentioned about some of that cross-collaboration and cross-functional review to make efficiencies within the process for submitting requests and disseminating that information within the organization. He also talked about the ability to understand the source of funds in here. And then also lastly is the ability to manage and have some oversight to how am I spending those projects, what's left to be remaining, and so forth, and just to get visibility to that. So for today's quick demonstration, we're going to just go through a couple of these quick items to give you a glimpse of our solution. Let's start off here with manage requests. And you'll see that we've created the ability to submit requests and then also to see where those requests are as part of the workflow. So So now this is just a sample in terms of just some capabilities. We're just working with, in this illustration, the facilities department. We see that we've got just 4 requests out there for the current budget year cycle. I can see quickly that I've got 2 requests that have been already approved. I can see the capital request amount, and then I can see the titles associated with it. I also see that I have a request that's been promoted and is under now department review, and then I have another request here that's building in my sandbox. So this view gives me a quick visibility to all of my requests. And then this is where I can actually go and prioritize from a spending amount what projects and requests that I think are really more important for me. So I can go and change this up as the year progresses. We've built in here some right-click actionable items in here. So this is where I can go in and create requests as well as view some properties associated with those requests. These business rules or actions in here basically will take you through, and you can see that I've actually created a new request, and it's assigned to me the next request number that is available within the system, and I can go through, and it's sitting here in my sandbox as initially submitted, and now I can go ahead and give it a description. So I just want to call it, for example, I know that I'm doing a new people security scanning system in here, so I'm going to just put in here my title for my new request, and I'm going to go ahead and save that information. So that's just giving me a title of that request information. If I want to, I can go ahead and just start to right-click in here. You'll see that I've got the ability to part of my request submission is to submit financial. We had said that once we promote a request is the approval mechanism here. So again, we have the ability to manage that process. So this is just the same workflow in terms of the request view that I just showed you previously, but I can now go to the approval process. Now, depending upon your security and your role within the system, you would be assigned to one of these appropriate levels of approval. So if I'm a department manager, I would see the department level approval. And as you know, some obviously requests will probably require additional approval levels, either at the VP level or maybe at a executive steering committee or management level approval. If it's a new building or new facility that we're doing, it takes approval a little bit beyond the typical level. This is that approval that was promoted in here under department review. This is where the department manager can go ahead and either approve or reject this request. If it gets rejected, I have the ability to put in as a department manager why I'm rejecting it. If I promote it, then if this is requiring another level of approval, then this request would now get routed to the next level of approval process in here. And then over here, we have the ability to view and align the requests that we have approved to projects. So this will give me the ability so that once I've got a request, it's been approved, we've set up a new project code in the source system, and now I can go ahead and align that request that's been enabled, and then I can go ahead and pick through this list. I would see the list of available project codes in here, and then this is where I can go and now align those requests with those projects, and now I can start seeing the actual spending that's occurring along these project codes. So far, we've seen the ability to input and manage my requests and promote those requests. We've seen the ability to approve those requests in here. And then also, we have the cross-functional review. So this is where David had mentioned earlier about one of those challenges is getting the visibility. So as we know, a lot of requests will have impact either on the supply chain or purchasing or facilities in here or IT. So those individuals who are responsible for those specific areas will now also be able to view all of those requests that are impacting their areas. So no longer in silos in there. And then with the understanding funding, we have the ability to go and view the funding sources in here. So you can see we have the capability to do some dashboarding within the system and then to grab some of that information. So in this particular view, you can see what dollar amounts are coming over by year from operations spend, source funding, what's coming in from debt, and then what is coming over from endowments, grants, or others. We also have, again, aligning the entire process. From an executive perspective, they can go ahead and view executive type dashboards at a more summary, higher level in here. So this is where, as an organization level, you might want to see all the budget amounts that have been allowed for. What have you drawn down on those projects in here? What additional funding requests have come over? And then what is the remaining budget balances? And then you can get some dashboards to see some of that budget and how it's being spent by organization from a graphical perspective in here. So again, some nice visualizations that are very useful so that I can actually get that information real time. And then most importantly is the ability then we talked about, not only aligning the requests, but also then to manage and have visibility to those projects. So no longer do I have to go to a separate system. So within here, once a project has been set up and established, I've got some different ways to go and view some of my projects. And one in particular, for example, is looking at a project overview. So in this particular view, as a planner, I have access to the projects that I have authority to view. These are my projects in here. I can see what has been budgeted. I can see in here the amount that has been spent, what might be remaining, and then I can go ahead and look at my forecasted amounts in here. Now, if I know that I'm going to be adjusting some of those forecasts, I have the ability to go update my forecasted spend for some of these projects, again, using the same interface. And then not only do I have the ability to go and just view all my projects, but I can see then also what projects are nearing completion, and then also from a finance perspective, I can go ahead and make some updates as well. So hopefully this gave you a quick glimpse as part of our solution, in terms of the challenges that we talked about, the ability to go and address. And hopefully, if you'd like a more in-depth demonstration, we're more than happy to provide that for you. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to David.
Thank you, Misha. Let me just share. All right. Thank you, Misha, for the demonstration on our demo app of our prescriptive business process called Alithya's Capital Portfolio Planning. We'll wrap up today. Some parting thoughts. I like to take the tact with CPP and enabling it in a robust technology like Oracle's EPM planning, which Misha showed everyone. It's really around the idea that as our institutions change, we need to make our workplaces a better place to work. We want to improve our internal customers' experience. You'll see a lot about CX and UX. And a lot of times that's from the perspective of external customers, but we also want to, empower our internal people and improve, the quality of life working in our organizations and make the routine easy. Some examples of where you could go with using a technology in a process like this. Can you submit a capital request from your phone or your tablet? Do requesters, because it's in a system, get feedback on where their requests stand or what additional information is needed about their request, or that they missed certain portions of key fields of their request? Do requesters get feedback? And then even to the point, if you have a manual capital process, it's unlikely that a manager can decide in real time to approve a routine capital spend. Let's do a small project to fix something or invest in a new proof of concept or something like that. Can a manager decide in real time to approve from their capital budget and see what they have available and decide whether to approve a capital request within their approval limit? And then with the ability, if with the business process change aspect of this, can the organization see emerging needs if people are building up their sandboxes, reviewing them as a team periodically? Can the organization start to see some emerging needs beyond what's just in front of them over the next 6 or 12 months? So my parting thoughts: encourage those closest to the customer in your organization in the functional areas to think a little more strategically. Take advantage of the sandbox concept, whether it's in a system or within your organizations. Instead of asking for capital once a year, ask people to start to build up their own investment roadmaps. and get a process going where our managers can start to review those miniature investment roadmaps with their teams throughout the year. And you know, I say make capital planning fun. In my eyes, one of the great things about capital planning is you really are investing in your organization's future, and that's, you know, as I go and meet with different organizations, that's the best part about it. Is this is the stuff that's building new buildings, building new capabilities, building new products, and it's really the bleeding edge of where my clients are going. So as we wrap up, very passionate about capital planning. We certainly can help. If you'd like to brainstorm with me or Misha, we'd definitely be excited to just talk informally about how you're doing capital planning and how our prescriptive process may fit in your organization. We certainly, if you'd like to do the demo to build up interest or excitement in your organization, we can have Misha do a private demo for you, and then we certainly can do a short assessment to compare your current capital planning process against our prescriptive process that we built up. We'll be sending out these slides. They'll be available on Alithya's website, so you'll have our contact information, and please feel free to reach it. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Joey Alamo. Joey, I'm going to like to take us home.
Yep, thanks, David. Appreciate that. In the interest of time, any questions that were submitted that weren't answered, we'll follow up with an email response to you. You can email questions to infosolutions@alithya.com, and we'll provide an email response. Visit our YouTube channel to view recordings of our previous webinars, including this one. Also visit our website to learn about and register for upcoming webinars, and follow us on social media to get alerts about upcoming events, training, and webinars. We are following today's webinar with the webinar in January that focuses on Alithya's capital portfolio planning process built upon real-world implementations in the healthcare industry. Visit the events page on our website to register for this and other upcoming webinars. I know January seems like it's far away, but it's not. It'll be here real fast. So we've got some webinars set up already for the new year in January and February, and you can find those on our website on the events page. Thank you to our audience for joining us, and thank you to David and Misha for sharing your knowledge and expertise during this presentation. This concludes today's webinar. Thanks, everyone.